Talkin Beavers is presented by Car Lumber. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. It is certainly a week that the Beavers are trying to find something to be thankful for after the heartbreaking loss to Washington. They fall 22-20 in the last home game of the season at Reser Stadium, and now quickly have to turn the page to take on the Oregon Ducks in a rivalry week that means a whole lot. Welcome to Talkin Beavers. I'm AJ McCord alongside Jason Jean-Baptiste. Played defensive end for Oregon State from 2001, 2003. And of course, the voice of the Beavers. You heard DJ say that he left it out, everything out there on the field. Our Mike Parker doing the same. So Mike, working on your voice a little bit this week. We need you ready for Friday. So for those of you listening at home, this is why. It's because Mike, the MVP of every single Oregon State game. But we got to get your thoughts on this matchup against Washington. Mike, you were in Reser Stadium, the final home game of 2023. Give me some initial thoughts on Oregon State's game against the Huskies.
Well, AJ, I think the way I sound is indicative of the fact that it took everything out of me, out of my voice. And I'm a game-time decision for the 127th rivalry game. Your words are very kind. What happens to me and my voice is of little consequence and compared with what a big game that was and how gut-wrenching and heartbreaking it was. I've been around the Beavers since I moved to Oregon in 1973 and have been calling games since '99. That game makes a very short list of one of the toughest losses ever, all that was riding on it. And now the guys have got to pick themselves back up because there's almost a feeling of anticlimactic an aspect to it because you thought you'd be going into the rivalry game still with the conference title hopes alive. They've got to find the way to be fully ready and all in. And whether I get to call the game or not, it'll be up to the guys on the field. I think they'll be ready, but that was a tough loss.
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't, honestly, you're feeling sick. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather too, just based off the loss itself. I had a hard time getting up the next morning. I mean, that is one of the most heartbreaking, like you said, losses I've encountered with Oregon State. I mean, everyone was, was happy. I mean, the Rockin' Reser was Rockin' Reser as it always is when we have a big game. And we walked away from that game just feeling like there was something that we didn't get, and it was the win. They played hard. Defense played well in the second half, but there was a little bit of a sentiment of unfinished business that was left on that field.
Absolutely, and I think talking with some of the players after the game, hearing Jonathan Smith earlier this week, there is that element of, okay, now we've got to find a new motivation for this Oregon game. Time now for our opening drive, brought to you by Capital Toyota, your way on the Parkway. This Oregon State-Washington game was just sort of the latest chapter in what has been a book of so close for the Beavers against the Huskies. This one really coming down to potentially, that fourth down conversion that didn't happen in the fourth quarter, but going back even sooner, you have the punt that went over the punter's head, ends up in a safety. And just like that, I mean, this was a 2-point game, which it's wild when you look at Oregon State's season. They're coming into this rivalry game at 8-3, and yet those 3 losses are by less than 10 points combined. And that's where Oregon State just has to have this feeling of, man, we were so close to everything. But before we get into that, I want to dive a little bit more into what you mentioned, Jason, that second half against the Huskies. Washington was 6 of 13 on third down conversions, all 6 of those happening in the first half, and the Huskies left scoreless throughout the entire second half. What is the biggest takeaway from this game against the Huskies that Oregon State can pull into this game against the Ducks?
Well, AJ, I'm happy you asked that question. And Mike, I think, one of the biggest takeaways for me is that, we talked about making adjustments at halftime and how all throughout the season the Huskies have been able to do that, so much so that they're still undefeated. Well, in the second half of that game, it was Oregon State that made the adjustments, and the defense stepped up. So for me, my biggest takeaway is that, this defense does have the capabilities. They do have the personnel to play well against high-octane offenses, which we all know Washington is. So as long as they keep on doing that, they can match up against anybody.
Jason, clearly the defense acquitted itself beautifully in the second half. Michael Penix, who's still very much alive in the Heisman conversation, may have almost played himself out of it by going 13 of 28, 162 yards, career lows at Washington. The one thing they could do, though, you mentioned Rome Odunze, when they needed a score in the red zone, when they needed to convert at the end to seal the game, Penix Jr. got the ball to Rome, and they made plays in those moments when the Beavers just weren't quite able to. That was sort of the excruciating, agonizing thing about this one, was the defense did everything you wanted it to, and I thought the offense in the end, with that incredible 10-minute drive for a touchdown, got the ball back, had a long field ahead, but we just sort of thought, hey, here we go, grind this thing out, milk the clock out, and have Atticus Sappington win it with no time left. That's what I thought we were moving towards on that final drive. And again, to not get it, to have things go awry, Washington deserves credit on its defensive side, but I know the Beavers are still going to live with some pain and regret about plays they didn't make.
Absolutely.
Now, one of the people who took that loss incredibly personally is Kitan Oladapo. Oladapo with a massive moment in that play where he forced the fumble. It looked like it was going to be a locked-in Huskies touchdown, but his mentality, his go-ahead, and ensuring that that ball got out of the hands of Washington's running back, a massive moment in the second quarter against the Huskies. He's going to join the show next on Talkin Beavers. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. It's time now for this week's legendary performance presented by Abby's, a legendary pizza tradition. We're so excited to be joined now by Kitan Oladapo. Thank you so much for joining us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I want to start by talking about that Washington game. Your defense, so critical. The forced fumble there in the second quarter. Break down that play for me. What did you see as the running back for Washington is just blitzing away from you that you knew you could still make an impact?
Honestly, I just knew how rainy it was, and we were talking on the sideline, get after the ball. And I don't know, I felt like he was slowing up a little bit, and I saw my chance, and I took it. And shout out to Keely for hopping on the fumble. But no, that was definitely a great memory.
Your last game at Research Stadium as a senior, to have that moment, what did it feel like when Akili jumps on it? You know that you were the one to force that fumble. Just what was going through your head as the result of that play and your teammates all celebrating? Guys
were hyping me up, so it's always great to see them, bring the chainsaw out and see my teammates getting hyped.
That chainsaw, certainly something that is so unique to Research Stadium. And as you move forward, you're going to face Oregon in a very unfriendly environment down there in Autzen Stadium for you guys. But that second half, again, against Washington, where you held the Huskies scoreless, how do you bottle that up, apply it to the Ducks for all four quarters?
At the end of the day, we don't have to change our whole style, change our whole scheme. We got to go out there and just be the Oregon State Beavers. I think that's what we're really focusing on, just urgency and attention to detail going up. So I don't think we have to go out there. Even Coach Smith last week said, leave your cape at home. We don't need Superman ball. We just need to be us. So I think that's what guys are really focusing on.
Walk me through the story of how you started bleaching your hair.
It started with my mom back in 2020. She was bleaching her hair, going blue and all that. Actually, my grandma my grandma's had purple hair for the longest. And I think it's really funny. She's so cute. So my mom started, experimenting with hair, and I used to actually have a box, like this big ass box. It looks like kid and play. That's what people used to make a joke about. So I bleached it. And then I started doing different colors, blue, like platinum blonde and orange. And I just, was having fun with it. So, yeah.
You mentioned your mom, and I know that that's a relationship that means a lot to you. It must, obviously. You're sort of mirroring your image a little bit after what she's doing. How has your relationship with her helped carry you through the last 6 seasons as you figured out who you are as a human, who you are as a football player?
She's like my buoy out in the middle of the ocean, keeping me afloat. Not riding the roller coaster, riding the waves, but really just keeping me, steady on my mission. Dark days, bad days, I would just call her, and she would lift me up and, tell me things that maybe I didn't want to hear at the time, but that I need to hear. And she's always been just a great motivator and great support system for me. Good or bad game, I always know she's going to love me and, take care of me. So it's good to have her.
Kitan, thank you so much for taking the time, because it is really cool to just see how you have been a part of this Oregon State program. Look forward to watching you on Friday. Best of luck against the Ducks.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Have a good one.
We'll have much more Talkin Beavers when we return. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. It is time now to stay ready with Leatherman. Leave nothing undone.
Us, man, we don't want to make this one loss turn into two. Don't let this loss carry over into the next game, because we're going to play a really good opponent, just like we did this week. So for us, man, we got to be able to learn from this. Chalk it up, but don't dwell on it too much, man. Kind of have that 24-hour rule, because at the end of the day, man, Ducks don't really care that we won or lost right there. We got to be ready to play.
It is so critical to make sure that you do not let one loss turn into two. But from a player's perspective, knowing how heart-wrenching that game, that loss against Washington was, how do you do that?
Well, I think you find motivation, and in motivation, here's what I mean. We know for a fact that in this state of Oregon, one things that you don't have to worry about, concern yourself with, is that you'll constantly hear about the University of Oregon. Oregon this, Oregon that. They got what kind of uniforms are they going to wear, what kind of new cleats they have, what kind of new helmets they have. And especially this year where they've done so well, Oregon State, the team of the Beavers, have heard about them from the very outset of the season. And us being the Beavers, we get tired of it. We get sick and tired of hearing all the time about how well they're doing, what they're doing down the road in Eugene. So in terms of motivation, there cannot be any more added motivation to go down there, with this being probably the last rivalry game that we know of for the foreseeable future. Who knows when the next one will be? This is something that they need to really hang their hats on, take some pride with it, and go down there and do what they need to do. So I think that's where you turn the pages with the added motivation of this week.
And AJ, there were times, and both schools and both fan bases should remember this, there were times when the winner of this game, sometimes it was all you were playing for. If you'd been through a 1-9, a 1-10 type season, if you could get this game, it made your season. To the credit of both programs, the stakes have been so much higher in recent decades, and they had a chance to be a la 2009, and this one, had the Beavers made one more play against Washington, these teams would be fighting it out for a spot in Vegas. So for the Beavers, to me, we've talked a lot in this show today about heartbreak and agony and how difficult. You turn that all around. If you win this game, I feel like you expunge most of that. How you think about the 2023 season could indeed be defined if you go in and knock, as Jason talks about, the rivalry you get tired of hearing about. If you win this game, after everything you've been through and the painful defeats, I don't think anyone would be feeling any pain in Eugene on Friday if you're part of Beaver Nation.
And I think going off of that from Oladapo's interview, we heard him talk about, in high school, growing up in Happy Valley, just about an hour and a half up I-5 from Corvallis, Eugene. He talked about how a lot of the people from his high school chose Oregon for the Flash, and he has that underdog mentality. For DJ, he's going to be going against his brother on the opposite side of the field for the first time in their lives. He said the last time that's happened, they were maybe playing basketball in the front yard as kids. And so I think this is going to be a situation where the Beavers have to take it personally. That is how they turn things around. That is how they make sure that they do everything they can to end this final regular season game against the Ducks on a high and sort of send the Pac-12 conference as we know it out, with the note that Oregon State is still not one to be trifled with. And so we've given you a little bit of insight into what we think Oregon State is going to have to do. Let's talk to the crew that's been talking about the Ducks all season long. The Talkin' Ducks crew joining us now to break down what they think is going to be critical in this game on Friday.
Well, what's going on, Talkin' Beavers? It's the Talkin' Ducks crew here. Should be a pretty good one. Mike, Jason, AJ, when you look at this game, I think there's a lot of different ways it can go, but from an Oregon perspective, you do feel pretty confident. This game being at home, I think Oregon covers the spread on this one. It's 13.5. I think the Ducks win by 14 in this one in the final matchup between these two teams in the Pac-12. Aaron, what do you think?
I disagree, man. I think the Beavers definitely cover. They are going to come into this game fired up, and they should, for a lot of different reasons. We won't get into the off-the-field stuff, but this is a huge game for the Beavers, and they don't get blown out, dude. They've lost 3 games by a total of 8 points. They don't mess around like that. The defense is good enough. The quarterback's good enough. The running game's good enough. They're going to make this a game, but I do believe they will not have enough to deal with both Skywalker. Dude is playing at Jedi levels. I think he leads them to a win 33-27, but it's going to be a good game.
And I think this is going to be a 31-13 type of game. Here's why. Oregon's defense has, I think they've given up fewer than, 6 touchdowns all season? Like, this defense has been absolutely incredible. The biggest reason, though, Bo Nix. Bo Nix has thrown fewer interceptions in this entire season than I threw in that one game that we won't talk about it down in Corvallis that one year. Joey 5 Picks lives for a reason. So Bo Nix has been precise. He has been surgical. He's been efficient. Bo Nix is going to be the difference in this game.
This is the big game. Ducks, Beavers. You throw out the records. Doesn't matter.
No, you don't.
But this game scares me with the Beavers because they can run the football and they play great defense. They don't give up the explosion plays. That's what scares me a little bit. But you have to have dudes to win football games. And so I think Oregon has more dudes that will help them win this game. But it's a close game, maybe by 10 points.
All right, guys, should be a good one. Thanks again for letting us stop by.
Well, how friendly of them. I don't know if I've ever experienced such friendly banter coming from the Ducks. And Jordan, listen, I love you. You're like a brother to me. I really do. Joey, I don't like you as much. You're a quarterback, so I have a thing for quarterbacks. So I'm sorry, I don't like you as much. Anthony, Aaron, thank you for that. But here's what I have to say about what you guys just said, is that I disagree. I think the Beavers are going to come down there and we're going to take care of business. Now, listen, I know that it's the day after Thanksgiving. Everyone's going to have their turkey sandwiches. Everyone's going to get ready. You guys have a little bit more fixings than what we like. We like it nice and simple, just like we did last year, where I call it just won the damn ball game, where we liked it nice and simple and we took care of business. And we plan on doing that again come Friday.
I appreciate all 4 of those outstanding men, former players, journalists, great crew. I understand that it's easy to fall in with what everybody is saying about this game, and they're saying it eloquently. But I agree with you, Jason. It's going to be a little different than I think what they are expecting come Friday. I expect the Beavers to build off what they did in the second half and to give themselves, with DJU as highly motivated maybe as he's ever been in a game, with his family playing against his brother. I expect him to go out on a big-time note.
Kickoff 5:30 Pacific time on Friday night from Autzen Stadium. One of the things that Talkin Ducks crew touched on is the quarterback. And of course, Bo Nix, another very special one that Oregon State's defense is going to have to face. More Talkin Beavers when we return. Talkin Beavers is presented by Par Lumber. We would be remiss to not mention happy Thanksgiving to all of you. Jason, Mike, is there anything you're particularly thankful for this season?
One of the things that I'm incredibly grateful for, obviously I'm grateful for you guys, everyone that's on this staff, on this team. I've had a tremendous time doing this once again this year, but I'm incredibly thankful for the fan base at Oregon State as well. In a year and a season in which we don't know what the future will hold. We don't know what's going to happen in 2024, 2025. The one thing that we know and we saw this year was the turnout of the fan base and supporting the Beavers, rocking Reeser every single weekend that we had a game there, and supporting this team, supporting this coaching staff, supporting the players in a fashion and a way that I think any program would be proud of. So I'm thankful for that, and I'm thankful for you guys for supporting the Beavers the way that you have this year.
Well, I'm thankful for hot tea. I'm thankful for the people who sent suggestions about how to get this thing better. I'm grateful to Beaver Nation that's sort of been looking out for me, sending me texts and emails. So thankful for the fan base. Thankful for what Jonathan Smith and the program has allowed us to experience. Part of the reason that we've been so gut-punched and devastated since the game and this week, even trying to get ourselves back up again, is because he's put the program in a position when it really counts. So it matters a lot. And on that note, AJ and Jason, speaking of mattering, I'm thankful for the rivalry called the Civil War since 1929. The rivalry game now, the 127th meeting, the place that it's had in my life, the place that Jason, I know it's had in yours as a student athlete and player in the program, the place that it's had for generations of families. I'm thankful for it. It's been such a central part of each year, each calendar year. And so I'm thankful for what we've experienced. I hope I can be thankful for maybe a few more battles. I don't want this to be the last ever between the two.
Absolutely, Mike. And I think Beaver Nation would return that they are thankful for the presence that you have had in these rivalry weeks. You're getting ready to call your 25th, and certainly we wish you nothing but the best. All the hot tea, the honey. I would give you my voice if I could, my friend, because
thank you.
Yes,
this week
Thanks,
is not
guys.
the same without you. So thank you for pushing through. And I'm so thankful for the two of you guys, our producer, Sean. Just this show has been such a joy for me this season, and everybody watching at home. You guys are the ones who make it possible. So with that sappy finish, thank you so much for joining us this week on Talkin Beavers. Hope you enjoy your Thanksgiving holiday, get some time with loved ones, and enjoy the game tomorrow, Beaver Nation. We will see you back to break it all down as we do each and every week this season. But hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. For Jason, Mike, myself, have a good one.